Okay. So yes, this is Plasticine Soul. This is Jania's Dancester Cyberpunk fic. Sorry, Dancester Cyberpunk heist fic. We are on
Nice.
chapter 13 of 67, and this one is also rated mature for graphic depictions of violence and major character death. We've already seen a little bit of each of those. All sorts of ships in this bad boy. Pat's side of fic. Uh, we've got Mitula, we've got Damara and Latula, we've got Mina Arania, we've got Damara and Rufia, we've got Mulin and Kurlos, we've got Matuna and Kurlos, and we've got Porum and Mina. All Dancestors plus Vriska, Doc Scratch, Terezi, Kanaya, Aradia.
Yes.
Some tags. AU, Cyberpunk AU, Alternian Empire is the Cyberpunk AU. It's set on Alternia. Adult trolls live in Alternia. Alternia focused. Alternia is terrible. Cyberpunk technology, computers, relationships, heist, crimes and criminals, organized crime.
This is promising.
Ancestors, Bephorus ancestors, Bephorus. Canon typical violence. Everyone is an adult. Polyamory, infidelity, identity issues, PTSD, existentialism and existential angst, memories, social issues, class differences, military backstory, death, grief and mourning, trans character, trans female character, queer platonic relationships, specifically queer platonic Kurlos and Matuna and Kurlos and Mulin. There's AIs, there's government agencies, government conspiracies, secrets, science fiction, cosmic horror, and eldritch content. No scrub or suburb, and then queer platonic Matuna and Mulin, and finally body horror.
Yeah, there's a
Oh
lot going on
boy.
in here.
Save the best for
Uh,
last.
yeah, and actually, now that I read all that, this specific chapter specifically has a character implying that someone else should commit suicide and relationships and infidelity. We should be done in like 15, 20 minutes if that's not your bag.
Yeah.
Maybe half an hour.
So, as continuing our fine tradition, I will narrate my own work. However, we have a bunch of voices here. We need a Damara, a Latula, a Porum, and then there's Doc Scratch, which Bucky's been doing a pretty cracking job of. So I think
Nice.
that
Yeah.
they should continue. But yeah, we got Damara, Latula, and Porum up for grabs.
I love Damara. I will take her.
You can be
Excellent.
Damara,
Cool. I'll be the other ones.
Rad.
Latula, and Porum.
All of the other
Awesome.
ones. Of
Nice.
course.
Porum and who else?
Rad girl.
Latula. Yeah.
Ah, yes.
The
Radical.
raddest girl.
All right.
Radical.
Yes, this is chapter 13, that loose jade thread. First day of the 12th bilunar perigee. Authority safe house, North Alternian capital. Damara found that she often got misread by people. They tended to assume that her physical toughness and general ability to appear detached meant that she simply didn't feel anything. Nothing could be further from the truth. Sitting in the electric coupe with Latula, what she felt was a combination of intense awkwardness and creeping terror. She looked up to the sky, expecting a drone to be there. She wished she'd talked about what had happened before the depot job.
We should have talked about a lot of things.
Oh, I forgot. I love your fucking Russian, Damara.
Thank
Anyway,
you.
I forgot about that. It was a strange combination of emotions to be feeling, and she had at least an hour to have to feel them. Terezi had tasked the two of them with driving out to the house that Porum owned on the outskirts of the city and bringing her back in. That gave her a minimum of an hour alone with Latula to sit in awkward, uncomfortable silence.
I'm sorry.
Latula's voice from the passenger seat next to her, faint, but breaking that silence all the same.
I don't know how to do this.
Damara waited. She didn't say anything, but turned slightly towards Latula and nodded for her to keep talking.
I don't have the... Hang on, I gotta open the fic. Uh-oh.
Mhm.
Oh, here we go. Oh, I see. Okay. I never told Matuna what happened between us. I don't know how to tell him what happened. I don't think he'd be upset. I just...
Waved her hand.
This is so fucking stupid. Like, this is the time.
It seemed like an odd choice of topics, given the recent attempt on their lives, but Damara understood that. The need to compartmentalize and break life down into components that at least seemed manageable. Damara sighed, her broad shoulders rising and falling with her breath.
Is this Latula or Damara?
This is Damara, sorry.
Okay. What else are we doing? Sitting here and not talking?
She could hear the edge of annoyance in her voice. She wasn't going to apologize for that, wasn't going to say she was sorry for having feelings, not after everything that had happened.
Look,
Damara said.
I really cared about you. I still do. Even if we didn't really talk after everything, I never held any of it against you, but I need to know if this is still something you cared about or not. If you're good, then we have a fun thing, and we don't need to keep bringing it up. But if this is real...
She trailed off. Latula would get the implication.
Yeah, I know. Machuna deserves to know.
She said quietly, then laughed.
It seems like a strange thing to talk about, given everything.
You'd prefer what? To speculate wildly about why Scratch went through all this trouble instead of just trying to kill us from the beginning?
Latula shrugged.
I don't know.
Me neither. It doesn't make sense. You're the detective here. Use detective brain.
Latula blushed.
Sorry, I I don't have the friggin' let's see. It wasn't that's not what I did.
Damara reached out and gently put a hand on Latula's knee, squeezing lightly.
I know. I'm teasing you. I'm allowed to have a sense of humor, right?
There was a smile on Latula's face, if only faintly.
Sure. Still feels weird. We should be investigating.
You said it yourself. That's not what you did. That's definitely not what I did. Someone acts, I react.
She saw Latula blush at that. Damara took her hand off Latula's knee and the silence crept in again, cut only by the sound of the rain outside and the light hum of the electric engine. Half a sweep in the past. Staging area outside the fleet exclusion zone, Earth Alternian capital. Soft, but insistent. Damara pressed forward into the kiss, reaching up to grab the nape of the other woman's neck.
This is stupid. Such a bad idea. Oh god, why do I need this so much right now?
He had Latula pressed up against the empty shelving in the back room. There wasn't anywhere else for either of them to go, and Latula was pushing back into the kiss, the taste of stale, day-old coffee on her tongue. And somehow that was the best taste in the world. Damara heard herself moan around the edges of the kiss.
This is probably wrong on some level. Fuck it.
It wasn't really her business what went on between Matuna and Latula, and the longer the kiss lasted, the less she gave a shit. Latula's hands were in her hair, grasping, pulling, seeking, a desperation there that Damara could completely understand. If she was going to die, then at least she could have this one small, soft thing before she did. She pulled back and looked at Latula, blushing, flushed teal, panting a little, sweating. She had her bottom lip between her teeth and was breathing heavily. Her eyes kept scanning up and down. When she spoke, her voice was halting and quiet, but every word was formed clearly.
I want you.
That was about as forward as she could possibly get.
It isn't my business what they talk about. I don't care.
Damara put her hands around Latula's waist. This time she drew her in, pulling her closely, feeling Latula's hips pressed into hers. Damara felt her face heating up. Strange what her brain decided to focus in on. Almost being slaughtered in a job that went off the rails. Normal, everyday thing. Barely worth remembering. Passionate, slightly guilty sex in a filthy back room half a sweep ago? Oh, now that was something to think about.
Oh, fuck it. I think about you a lot.
Damara said, staring straight ahead out of the window at the road and nothing else, really focusing on the road.
I think about what we did a lot.
Oh?
Latula's voice cracked ever so slightly.
Yes, I guess almost dying has that effect on me.
Latula groaned.
I need to talk to him when we get back from this.
Silence again, this time lasting for considerably longer, as both women sat alone with their private thoughts. They arrived at the location Terezi had given them and parked the car out front. The house itself was sprawling, a single-level building overlooking a valley below. It was surprisingly isolated. The nearest neighbor was a good 10-minute walk over. That isolation didn't make Damara feel much better about any of this. She found her hand straying towards the pistol she had in a holster on her hip.
She did well for herself.
Layla commented as they stepped out of the car and began to walk down the pathway that led to the front door.
I guess running errands for murderous piles of shit has its advantages.
Next to the door was a simple intercom system. Damara pressed the button and waited. After a moment, the door opened to reveal Porum's face. Her eyes were red and her face was still damp. She'd been crying recently.
I knew you'd come, whoever was left alive.
Said her voice wavering and uncertain.
You're here to kill me, I assume.
Damara turned to Latula, who was already looking at her with a puzzled expression. It was a logical enough conclusion to come to given the circumstances, but this had a weird feeling to it. Porum wasn't making a move to run, or fight, or anything else, and her breath smelled strongly of alcohol, although she seemed to be handling it well enough.
No, actually,
Latula said.
it's complicated.
Porum shrugged.
Come in then, I suppose. You'll have to excuse the mess.
Followed her in through the door, and Damara found herself wondering what possible mess she could be talking about. The house was spotless and only minimally furnished. Everything seemed to have an exact place it belonged. It wasn't until they passed into the central room that Damara saw what she meant. In the corner of the room, sitting on a small glass-topped desk, was a small telnet terminal. The keyboard was smashed, and next to it on the desk was an empty liquor bottle. That explained the smell on Porum's breath, at least. Porum walked to an armchair and sat down with a groan.
I'd actually...
She trailed off and looked down at the ground. Without warning, she burst into tears, sobs running through her body. She buried her face in her hands.
I'd actually prefer if you just killed me.
Damara shot another glance at Latula, who shook her head with an expression of absolute bafflement.
We were sent to come get you.
Damara said quietly, kneeling down next to Porum.
The authority wants to talk to you, actually. We want to talk to you, too.
I know.
She said, talking around the sobs.
After what happened to you, I know.
Damara furrowed her brows. She seemed strangely contrite for someone who had essentially sent them to the slaughter, and also appeared to know what she'd done. But it wasn't sitting well with her, which meant there was more going on. It didn't take a legislacerator to figure that out.
What happened?
Damara asked, her tone as gentle as she could manage.
It's just so much.
Porum said, breathing deeply as if she were trying to stop herself from crying. It helped, at least a little bit.
I'm not even sure where to start.
Just fucking talk already. We don't have time for this.
It took everything Damara had not to scream at her.
I don't care how you put it together or what order you say it in. We're grasping in the dark here.
I was involved in the nurseries for a while. I was in charge of grubbing.
Is there going to be a point to this story? I feel like we're on a timer here.
Damara growled at Porum. She shook her head.
Please, there's a point. I promise.
Tears in her eyes, Damara stayed quiet.
I was
She continued.
very much involved in the process. It brought me a great deal of joy, but I was also young and somewhat restless, and I found myself very much attracted to young Olive Blood, who had been sent by the Alternian army to identify certain rust blood grubs for future selection for, well, you know what it was for.
She looked directly at Damara, who frowned.
It wasn't. We were just doing our jobs. I told myself it was destiny, and she was just doing what the army needed to done to ensure that the Alternian Empire stayed strong and our people stayed safe. That's what we told ourselves.
She took a deep breath.
But I had some very red feelings for her, and she shared those feelings. We were together for quite some time. Everyone knew, and there was nothing as untoward. We were as close as two people can be, I think.
I am still not seeing the point here.
Damara interrupted. It was a sweet story, but she failed to see how it related to their current predicament.
I'm sorry.
Porum said.
I feel like you have to understand how this started.
Took another breath, halting, and mixed in with another round of sobs.
A few periges ago, maybe a quarter sweep, she was suddenly assigned to somewhere else. No one knew where, and I couldn't get in touch with her. Her apartment was empty, and she'd left no way to find her. It was so unusual.
Porum's eyes went to the terminal on the desk. Damara glanced over and noticed for the first time that the screen was still on.
Last perigee, I received a strange message on the telnet from a man who spoke with white text whose user ID couldn't be displayed properly. He told me his name was Scratch and that he knew where to find my matesprit.
Damara narrowed her eyes as she looked at Porum. This next part, she thought, was going to get ugly.
All I had to do was contact several people and pass some information to them. I was told very specifically not to look at any of the information. I was told if I did all this, followed instructions to the letter, that I'd be told where I could find my matesprit and how to get in touch with her again.
She looked up at Damara with wide, pleading eyes.
You have to understand how desperate I was. I was told that no one would be hurt. It was a complicated matter that required delicate handling, and I was helping facilitate that, nothing more.
Porum was crying again, her head bowed and the tears running down her cheeks.
You have to understand. He told me no one would be hurt. He promised me. I was so desperate to find her again.
She began to shake, her entire body rocking under the weight of whatever was upsetting her so much. Because this felt like more than guilt over having maybe sent some strangers into harm's way. The terminal screen was burning with its cathode ray glow on the desk. The keyboard was smashed, but the screen still burned. Mara turned away from Porum and crossed the room to the desk. She looked down at the screen.
I've received word that everything is in place. You've done admirably, my sweet girl. Truly, I must commend you.
Fine. Now can you please hold up your end? You promised me you'd tell me how to find her.
Oh, of course, your sweet love. Your matesprit, as you said. How painfully saccharine. It almost disgusts me. Were I capable of feeling such an emotion, of course.
I don't care. Just tell me. I'm begging you.
And a truly sweet thing that is, dear girl. It fills my heart with feelings I can only allude to. Alas, I must be the bearer of unfortunate news.
What do you mean? Is she okay?
Oh, no, most assuredly not. She's been dead for nearly 4 periges, killed in one of your empire's unfortunate skirmishes with rebels.
You fucking liar! You said you'd let me see her again!
No, I said I'd tell you what happened to her. As far as seeing her again, well, I'll leave that part up to you.
Damara looked down at the smashed keyboard, then over at Porum, who was sobbing quietly into her hands. Latula walked over and put a hand on Damara's shoulder.
We should get going, in case she wants another drone or something.
Damara reached up and squeezed the hand on her shoulder.
Give her a minute at least. I don't think he's going to send anyone here.
She looked over at the terminal screen. Its final message still burned in amber and white.
I don't think he feels like he needs to.
Thank you, Jojo.
Oh, damn. Also, thank you, Cheshire Creeper.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
That is a
It's
good
so
scratch
beautiful.
voice.
thank you.
That is a good scratch voice.
He said the money zone returns. God, Scratch is a creepy little asshole, and he deserves to sound like a creepy little asshole.
He really is, especially in that fic.
I like the I like your interpretation because it's like the kind of creepy that's, you know, like spine tingling. But I also like the interpretation of him sounding like a Muppet, like hello,
Yeah.
Rose and Vriska.
I don't think that voice would be appropriate for the tone of this fic, but
No.
but I do like that a lot.
Yes.